Hello, and thanks for joining us. Many across the country recently marked Mother's Day, and while it's a celebratory occasion for some, for others it can be a triggering time, reminding them of the babies they have lost and never got a chance to parent. We're about to hear the stories of couples journeying through pregnancy and infant loss, a devastating experience many navigate in silence. And for women who already know they are pregnant, about 1 out of 6 have a miscarriage. But that statistic in no way lessens the grief or the stigma families often bear.
Was it our second date we talked about it?
Children have always been part of Jen and John Marriott's dream. Shortly after they were married, they decided it was time.
I came walking out into the hallway with a shirt that said "Future Canucks fan" with little handprints on my belly.
But 9 weeks later, that excitement was shattered by grief following a miscarriage.
It was tough. I just felt really alone because we hadn't told anybody. You have this fairy tale of telling your parents they're going to be grandparents. You don't want to go to them and say you almost were.
The Canmore couple didn't give up. They even went to a fertility clinic in Oregon, tried everything to grow their family, but every time it ended in heartbreak. 5 losses in total.
It's devastating. It was really hard even to see pregnant people. I pulled away from a lot of friends. It was hard on us too.
Not really thinking of myself, or trying not to, and just trying to support Jen and be there for her. But it was tough.
4 times I ended up in the hospital, and not once did anybody tell me that there was anybody to talk to.
He just sent you on your way, like, good luck.
Yeah. With pain meds, here you go.
I've had people say things like, well, at least it was only 5 weeks along. At least you didn't get to feel it kick. I feel like a lot of women don't talk about it, partially because it's incredibly painful, but also because it gets downplayed a lot.
Rachel Davis and her husband have 2 healthy little girls, but they too had 5 losses, including twins. All their babies have names.
As a mother, you connect with that baby quickly. It's not just sad and disappointing, but it actually causes you to feel like you have lost a loved one over and over and over again when it's repeat. Understand that your partner is suffering as well, and the grief is going to look very different between the 2 people.
The Marriott's dream did come true, thanks to a surrogate who helped bring their little boy into the world. They agree staying quiet in their grief in no way minimized it.
Talk to people.
Now, according to Statistics Canada, in 2019, there were nearly 3,200 fetal deaths across the country, about 8 for every 1,000 births, and that includes babies 20 weeks gestation or older. Many families who have suffered the loss of a stillborn baby feel helpless, and they feel isolated.
I delivered 25-weekers in little tiny hospitals, babies in elevators.
As a labor and delivery nurse, she's been on the front lines of many difficult births, some ending in loss. But nothing could have prepared Leslie Bossard to experience it herself.
I didn't understand how much it would affect somebody's life long term.
In 2016, Bossard and her wife decided to have children of their own, with her wife's embryos and a sperm donor.
Well, I loved being pregnant. I felt so special. I thought it was the best thing in the whole world.
But at 20 weeks, news no parent should ever have to hear.
It was deemed that the baby was thought to be incompatible with life.
On Christmas Eve, Leslie gave birth to Mackenzie, who passed away before she entered this world at 24 weeks.
You walk into a hospital where most people would go with hope and excitement is the biggest day of their life, you know, and then we walked out of that hospital the emptiest I've ever been in my entire life.
The Bossards were told their baby girl had a very rare condition and the chances of going through it again were next to none, so they tried again. But around 20 weeks, another devastating ultrasound.
And they said, your baby has the same thing wrong with it as the first one did. She lived 22 minutes. My wife and I just, laid there with her and held her until she died.
They named her Sydney. Her ashes are buried next to her sister's under this tree.
It's a loss like no other. You can't compare it to anything else. You shouldn't have to bury your own kids. That's the truth. Well, I think that I had good medical care, but I think the support that I had beyond that, I think it was atrocious. Even healthcare professionals are not comfortable with that kind of loss or with managing someone going through that kind of loss. So because of that, I think people don't get the care they deserve.
Her wife decided to try, and the couple now have 2 beautiful children. Leslie helps others going through similar journeys, and there's not a day that goes by she doesn't think of her 2 little girls who first made her a mama.
It's always a tough question. People ask me, how many children do you have? I had 2 pregnancies, 2 deliveries, and 2 children. I'm just unfortunate enough that they're not with us anymore. That would be a house full though, wouldn't it?
There's no doubt there is a lot of work to do to break the stigma and to make sure support goes to the people who need it most. And 2 women are doing just that in Calgary. They're hoping to help other parents navigate through the same nightmare they survived.
The journey of grief starts when you're told your child doesn't have a heartbeat, and it continues on.
She describes it as a birth and a death, all in the same moment. Danielle Kaluski's daughter, Emelina, died in utero at full term. These precious pictures are all she has.
I have 8 photos of my daughter to last me my whole life. I have maybe 12 hours of holding her to last me my whole life. Most people, when we talk about grief and we talk about pregnancy and infant loss, don't want to acknowledge it past that first year because we're supposed to be better. Well, we're not better. And what happens is then we start hiding our grief. So for 7 years, I hid my grief like a champ. The problem was I hid it to the detriment of my own mental health.
Anyone who's experienced loss knows that the journey afterwards is incredibly long. It's a lifelong journey.
Kaluski eventually met Aditi Loveridge, who also experienced the loss of her baby. The 2 women recognized a huge gap in care after bereaved families leave the hospital. So they created the Pregnancy Infant Loss Support Center, offering professional counseling, peer support groups, even yoga, and a helpline answered by those who have been there.
These are people that have lived through this experience. They can really relate to the journey. So if you're feeling really overwhelmed in the space that you're at, you can connect with them and they can give you some immediate tools.
Since the pandemic started, their client list has ballooned 300%. The pivot to online has opened doors to those living in rural areas and to so many now separated from their support networks.
Grieving people are already isolated, and so I think just having this accessibility during this really, really critical time in our history is, I think, also leading to that increase.
Clinical psychologist Nicola Fortin says those grieving don't always get the space and the support they need.
I have had clients who have wanted to have a type of funeral, a celebration or ceremony for the loss of their baby, and other family members feeling very uncomfortable or not wanting to attend that. Rather than assume it's a topic that the mother or the partner doesn't want to speak to, maybe ask first and see if they would like to talk about their loss.
Space these 2 women are dedicated to holding for those still quietly but desperately trying to find hope on a difficult road. If you are struggling with infertility or grieving the loss of your baby, you can text the pregnancy support line seen here on your screen from anywhere in the country. Someone who has already been through it all will be waiting on the other line. Thanks for joining us.